In this video, we're going to be covering grammatical voice. When we started with the introduction to verbs, I said that we would focus on the active voice, but we have just covered all of the tenses in the active voice, so we have to move on. So we can define voice. We can define voice as a grammatical category. Category of verbs that tells us about the function of the subject in relation to the verb. That tells us the function of the subject in relation to the verb. So voice is one of the 5 grammatical categories of verbs that tells us about the function of the subject in relation to the verb. And we said that we have done the active voice. Active voice. There are 2 other voices as well. There's the middle, which English does not have. English does not have a middle voice. And then there's the passive voice, which English does have. And some of you may already know what the passive voice is. So, we have to define these so that we understand what exactly we're doing. Because we just finished all the tenses in the active voice. Now we have to move on to these 2. So, how we can define what we've already done in the active voice. We can say that in the active voice, the function of the subject is the doer of the verb, as we know. So in the active voice, the subject is the doer of the verb. So we already know that. We can say John kicks the ball. John is kicking, he's doing the action of kicking. And the ball is the direct object. Excuse me. Now, the middle voice, which English does not have, is still, the subject is the doer of the verb. The subject is the doer of the verb. But then you'll say, what's the difference between the active voice and the middle voice? Well, the subject is the doer of the verb, but the subject is also the direct object of the verb. So this is so the middle voice is pretty much reflection. You can say I see the ball. That would be the active voice. But you can also say I see myself. I refers to me, and myself also refers to me. So I am the one that is seeing, but I am also the one being seen. So I'm the direct object of the verb, and I am also the doer of the verb. Greek has a voice for that, so that you don't need to say I see myself. You can just say I see, and it is conjugated correctly, so that in that one word, it is conveyed that the subject and the direct object are the same, are referring to the same thing. Now, the passive voice, on the other hand, the subject is not the doer of the verb. The subject is the direct object of the verb. The doer is the agent. So the doer is something else. Let's give examples of all of these. And we'll see all of this in great detail when we cover all these things. So, in the active voice, we can say John sees. Let's say John sees. Or you can say John sees the ball. John sees the ball. Or we'll say the girl. That's better. John sees the girl. In the middle voice, you can say John sees himself. Middle voice, John sees himself. So here, we'll say, so John is the subject throughout. John sees the girl. Girl is the direct object. Here, John is the subject and the direct object because this is referring to John. This is a reflexive pronoun, and the reflexive pronoun refers to the subject of the sentence. In the passive voice, you could say John is seen by the girl. John is the subject, but he is the direct object. So subject, doer. I know this is going to get messy because I'm trying to cram everything in here. Doer. The subject here is not the doer of the verb. The doer of the verb is the girl, who is the agent. And by here is expressing what the agent is. It's pointing to the agent. It's denoting a noun, in this case a noun, to be the agent of this passive verb. Rather, this is the whole verb. This is the verb and this is the auxiliary. I think it's considered an auxiliary in English. So the subject is John. The agent, which is the doer of the verb, is the girl. So the girl is doing the seeing, and what she is seeing is the direct object, which also happens to be the subject. John is seen by the girl. We will see how to express agency. We will see how to conjugate the middle and the passive with examples in the next videos, so don't worry. And you might be thinking, oh, it took us so long to do the active, all the active tenses, or rather all the tenses in the active voice. It's going to take us the same amount of time to do the middle and the passive. Oh my gosh. But you'll be happy to know the middle and the passive, or rather the middle and the passive, are exactly the same morphologically. You conjugate them exactly the same. They look completely identical. It's just the use of the conjugated verb in the sentence will tell you if it's middle or passive, and it's always clear what it is based on context. And if you have an agent, it will clearly tell you that it's the passive. So we only need to do what we just did for the active once more to cover the other set of voices. So we'll do that in the next videos.